Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, President of the African American Film Critics Association, and welcome to another edition of AAFCA Presents Conversations With. Today we're talking with creatives Gerard Bush and Christopher Renz, the creative duo responsible for the upcoming Lionsgate film, Antebellum, which will be available on premium VOD on Friday, September 18th. We hope you enjoy.
There she is. Guess what? Daddy is going to get you dressed for school today.
We are descendants of the gods. This land was always ours. But we must never relent. We're nowhere and everywhere.
You're from Virginia, right? I can tell. You're special.
We are the future.
You're not like the others.
I'm coming!
Whoever you were before, that's over.
What are we doing? What is the plan? We go tonight.
911, what is your emergency?
My name is Gil Robertson. How are both of you doing today?
We're, hanging in there, trying to keep from getting COVID. But other than that, it's good.
Yes. The film is amazing. This was my second time watching it, and it's a lot to unpack.
Well, we've heard, we know a lot about you, so it's nice to finally talk in person. It's hard for us because we carry the weight of wanting the movie to be received in the way that we intended it. And, that's a lot because I don't think Christopher and I realized as artists how heavy it weighs on our hearts, like the reception of the people that we want to really get it,
Mm-hmm.
that they at least get what we're intending to say.
Well, what do you want people to get? Because there is a lot there, and especially now, given our current backdrop of, racial unrest, civil unrest in so many parts of America. What should the takeaway be for, after
we start the movie with the William Faulkner quote, and that is because we truly believe until we can get to a place that we have the courage as a society in America to confront the past in all of its ugliness, we are going to continue to repeat it and find ourselves haunted by the past in this present moment. And by the way, in all likelihood, robbed of our shared future, because this is, I get the suspicion that this moment is demanding our urgent attention, and that it will not allow us to have another flashpoint that isn't transformed into a turning point. And that's either way. I mean, we are rife with anxiety about this upcoming election. We are deeply concerned about the direction the country is headed. But we also understand that this system that has been set up for the protection of white feelings, of generally speaking, the fragility of some white folks' ability to handle the truth. And because of that, there is a lot of performance that perpetuates this idea of their faux supremacy where it doesn't exist. And those are just a few of the themes that we're trying to highlight and amplify within the film. But I need to crystallize it, drill it down to just, we want people to feel activated after they leave the movie, activated out of any idea of complacency that they may have had about the world we live in. We did not know that Antebellum was going to be coming out prior to this latest inflection point. We had no idea. So it now feels like we're pointing a flashlight at the sun, but we hope that it lands in a way that it catalyzes it continues a much needed dialogue around this this country's original sin, and how the country was built on the backs of stolen bodies and free labor, and how that continues to plague any opportunity for equality for Black people in America as a whole, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, you could say that it plays the psyche of Black and white Americans, in ways that are clearly stated and aren't. The fact that the antagonists in this film felt so passionately about their position was certainly worth noting. And clearly, given our current environment where we have a leader who is still enjoying 40% approval rating, perhaps there's some who are still holding on to such beliefs. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the story from its inception. I mean, when did the idea come up, and how did the two of you go about developing it?
Well, we moved to LA a little over 3 years ago from Miami. And I was really apprehensive about the move because we were doing fine in Miami. It meant that we had to take a magic leap and try to grow. But my father passed suddenly before we were about to move. And that was especially traumatizing for me because I had to figure out with my mother how to get her accustomed to this next phase of her life, whilst also trying to there were a lot of, my dad was wonderful. We had our challenges. There were things that were left unspoken between us that I grappled with. And when we got to LA, I had this awful nightmare. And in the nightmare, I wasn't the star of the dream, which I normally am. It was this woman, Eden. And she felt, for me, so desperate for help that it was as though she was screaming across dimensions to reach someone. And the dream felt like, I can only categorize it as a dream because I can't articulate. I don't want to sound like a crazy person, but it felt ancestral. It felt like something that I had not experienced before. And when I got up from the dream, I put everything down in the notepad on my phone, all of the details, right down to her refusing to speak her captor's name. She would only refer to her tormentor as him. And I wrote down all of those details. And the next morning, Christopher and I discussed it, and we put pen to paper. This was not having any idea or thought that we were going to turn this into a film. We were going to just write the short story, which we finished that next day. And the short story was like, okay, the New Yorker, Mike Magazine, some of the Time, some of the magazines that we'd worked for in the past and written for that maybe it'd be a great place within some of our social justice canon for the written word. But it was Zev Foreman who read the short story through a friend of ours, Kenny Mack, and that is when everything changed. And he asked if he could produce the movie and to make it happen, this movie that didn't exist. And we said, okay, great. So you'll have someone write the script and we'll direct it. This is how naive we were, having only been in LA for 6 or 7 months. And he said, that's not how any of this works. And you all will have to write it. And we'd never written a script before, right? So
we never wrote a script before. And so when we did go to write the script, we were unaware of Final Draft. We didn't know that was a thing. And so we wrote it in Microsoft Word, which probably took us.
Yeah, we wrote the script in Microsoft. It was, we had no idea other than the story that we wanted to tell. And Zev Foreman said, I cannot believe that this is your first script. We're going out to market. And he immediately had us in rooms with presidents of studios. And then there was a bidding war situation. And then we kept turning studios down because we didn't think that they were going to, we didn't have a lot of confidence that we wouldn't end up in a development hell, and that the movie that we intended to put on the screen, that they were going to support that. It's when we met Nathan Kahane at Lionsgate, and we just had this instinct about him. He had an instinct about us, and thank God, because we love Nathan Kahane. We consider him, Admandino said, encourage your friends and they become brothers. We definitely consider him a brother now, and he really helped to foster us and this movie. And it was a process. I think that we wrote the script over the Christmas break. So that was it beginning of December?
Yeah, it was the end of December through the beginning of January of
2018.
18.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys got up and running, very quickly. Even veteran filmmakers, it sometimes takes them a much longer period of time to get things rolling the way the two of you have. Talk about the casting, because of course, Janelle is so central in the movie. Were you thinking of her when you guys were writing it, or was she someone who came along, as things developed?
What's interesting is Christopher and I have been together for 12 years. If that's interesting, it's interesting because of what happened. But in the genesis of our relationship, Janelle Monáe's Many Moons, she just was launched, and she served as the soundtrack for the first half of the first year we were together. We played it on repeat, and we just thought that she was such a dynamic, disruptive. We just knew when we saw her that she was going to eventually end up a category all her own. But when we wrote the character, we didn't think of Janelle, and we didn't think of anyone. We had deep concerns and apprehension about a big star whose supernova persona may supersede the audience's ability to get beyond, oh, that's so-and-so, and ground themselves in the movie and the character. But it was when we saw Janelle sitting in the audience, I think it was the 2018 Grammys. We were not at the Grammys. We were not invited. We were watching on our couch, and we saw Janelle looking at someone on stage, and she had this stoic expression, and it wasn't her electrifying performance. It was not that. It was her sitting in the audience. And there was this furnace that was burning so brightly within her that you could tell that she was trying to keep at bay, but it still was reaching the surface. And we looked at each other and said, that might be our Eden Veronica, because that is who she is. That's who she has to be for survival, she has to learn. She had already learned in her life prior that she would have to, in order to retain her power, she would have to put it in certain places where it was out of harm's way until such time as she could make the strike.
Make her move.
Right. So she knew that about her life, in her life prior, much less on that plantation. So I think for us, Janelle demonstrated at that moment that she was in possession of those qualities, that she could bring that to the role. I also think that Chris and I felt that there's something, there's a sort of halo over Janelle. There's sort of this mythological, this energy that feels supernatural, that feels like a little bit otherworldly, and not even just a little bit. It's an energy, it's palpable. And we needed that energy. We wanted a depiction of a Black woman on screen that felt as powerful as the Black women that consume our own lives, whether it's my mother, who is as much Dominique Devereaux as she is Diane Carroll, but like it's kind of the same. And then my sister, who's, you know, a Spelmanite, and, you know, all of the women that are so close-knit. We're a very close-knit family. And we hadn't seen these depictions regularly on screen, on the big screen. And Janelle just had all of that.
Christopher, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, speaking to, you know, when we saw her in the audience at the Grammys, I mean, Eden as a character, she doesn't speak. She doesn't have many lines in the first act, as you know from watching, and Janelle is able to communicate so much with just a look that was incredibly important for this character, and I think she delivered that with Eden.
It's almost like, you know, Helen Keller. I mean, you're getting something that, you know, feels like, you know, it's all of this power that has to be communicated without a word.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, well, she's a performing artist, so clearly, you know, that benefits her, especially with this particular project. I mean, talk about, you know, putting the piece together, though. And obviously the two of you have been in a relationship for years, but still it must have been interesting and somewhat challenging, I guess, navigating, you know, the storyline, and, you know, given, you know, the paramount role that race just consistently plays in our society. I mean, what were those late night, early morning, middle of the night conversations like as you were, you know, navigating the story and, you know, just trying to make it a balanced project?
I think one of the most interesting conversations we had was around the character of Elizabeth. And it was important to both of us, you know, in our study of history, that we make sure that white women were not left, you know, didn't
Get a pass.
Yeah, didn't give, you know, white women a pass as they kind of get in other movies, other tellings, like they were going along. We wanted to make sure that was not the case here, and we ended up kind of making her the final villain that Veronica had to overcome to get back to her life.
I mean, I think it's an interesting thing that happens when you're in a relationship, and sometimes I have these moments of epiphany where I realize that my partner is white, and I am vocally super Black in my way of being, in my expression, in my pride, and it's not that those two things are in conflict. It's that I think before we did Antebellum, that we missed a lot of opportunities for exploration in those conversations, because it wasn't something that we regularly addressed. It was just something that was like, we could experience what the microaggressions and racism in real time, because there's a Black me and a white him, and we saw the differences in perception and treatment. And so it was sort of a part of always this like this little humming in the background of our partnership. But with Antebellum, it was important to me, and I think that we can't help it as human beings, but to bring our experiences and the protection of our family to any of those conversations. And when you see the little white girl who's Elizabeth's daughter, that could be the little girl that is, you know, Christopher's niece and my niece, but it's like, that's like, I don't know if like we have to have those conversations about, do we want, you know, he might feel a certain way of having that little girl depicted in that way, and it's not about anything personal. It's about getting to the truth of the thing and the story that we're trying to tell. And luckily or fortunate for us, I don't think that we could have made this movie after only 2 years together. I think that we were able to make the movie after all these years together because we have a trust for each other. We have a trust that the other person understands. I think that Christopher truly understands and is constantly trying to ally with me in getting to the heart of the thing. And sometimes that process is not easy, but we have had knockdown, drag out, you know, rigorous debates about certain aspects of the film, but it's never, ever been about anything that would back away from the truth of white supremacy in America. It's been more about, I don't like that camera angle and I don't understand like why we're doing this. Do you know what I mean? Like, or in the script writing, it's about staying truly, really grounded in the truth of characters and the people that we know.
I mean, do the two of you think America's ready to have this conversation? I mean, we've been, you know, one would have thought that during the Obama years that, you know, that would have provided an open door to really talk honestly about race. And now we're, you know, we're hopefully through, anyway, our current president's office. But I mean, when will America be ready to talk about this in a candid way, and you know, so that we can start finally healing and moving away from it?
The only way that America is going to be able to confront this head on and have a real conversation where we can move forward is when the privileged class or the majority race in America understands that their future prospects are directly tethered to correcting this issue. I don't mean to sound cynical. I just think that there is a vested interest in the correction of what is happening and has been happening to Black people in America. If Black people, if we don't make it to that great future, you are definitely not going to make it. Our future is tied together. And I think that we are starting to finally understand that. Yes, you're having some fits and starts. I knew when Obama was elected that we were going to face a swift backlash of people that were going to want to correct the record. I can remember just walking around in Miami and a lot of a particular type of white person just looking for confrontation, just looking for you to, like, who do you think you are? Because for them, they always had a certain position, no matter if they were dirt poor or filthy rich, a currency that was to be white in America that was, in their minds, diminished as a result of Obama's election. So that's how we have this person, 45, and that's why we so desperately need to extract him through a real democratic process on the 3rd and you know, that's why in many ways we were really determined to start the movie at sunset and to conclude it at dawn, because the dawn is to represent that new day, that we know she didn't get out unscathed. She didn't survive unscathed, but she's moving toward that next great thing. And when the plane flies over, that's her getting home to her daughter, and her daughter, for everything that she's been through, is not going to, she'll be damned if she's going to have to go through that same thing.
Right, right. You know, Gabby Sidibe was, the casting was brilliant.
Thank you.
How did that come about? It was refreshing what she gave to the script. So how did that come about?
I mean, we had a fantastic casting director, Lorraine Mayfield, who brought Gabby forward, and there's really no one else that could have brought Dawn to life in the way that she did. She added so much to the character. It was just incredible to see her take Dawn from the page and just, you know, take it to the next level and
we had
her real.
We had lunch with Gabby at Sunset Tower. It was lunch that turned into like a late dinner. And we told her that Dawn, the character, was like someone who summers in Martha's Vineyard, someone who like has rarely been told no, that comes from a particular kind of Black privilege and a power that she owns. And we weren't going to get in the way of, now understanding when we were approaching people and having these conversations, we're first time feature directors and writers, and we were pretty kittenish about like, well, we would ask people at the end, you know, do you want the role? Like, we didn't know if they, you know, if they were even going to be willing to take this ride with us, because, you know, we have our social justice work. There had been like these digestible pieces, but they had to trust us in this long form feature. And Gabby for us was an incredible addition to the cast that really, she, in so many ways, she anchors the film, you know, in this really modern context. And she by far is someone who is not in any way utilizing the coping persona. She is 100% authentically her.
Yeah, she definitely owns it here. So the film gets made, a release date is set, and then we roll into this pandemic, and things started to move around, and now we're here, you know, with a great premium video on demand debut coming up on September 18th, which happens to coincide with two very significant dates, you know, in our history. I mean, talk about that journey, you know, of course, I guess wanting to have the dream release with the film opening up in theaters, but to in fact land on a date with so much power and significance.
Well, we didn't, I mean, we were of course devastated that we weren't going into theaters, that we had made that conscious decision in partnership with our studio partner, that with frontline workers and Black folk being the exposure to COVID was not an option for us. And it didn't seem like we were going to get to a place that most of these areas weren't still going to be swimming in it. But it was of equal importance that we get the movie out. And I would love to say that the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, that was deliberate, but it actually has so much more meaning because we landed on the date organically. And that is what reinforced the idea for us that we have the blessing of something bigger, and that the ancestors are watching, and that gave me some comfort. The inauguration and all of that goes with voting, that's so appropriate And that's another place that we're trying to get to, is to make sure that everybody is out and exercising their right, and getting this person out.
I mean,
And it's also the inaugural Black Voter Day, so
That's what I was saying. Like, that's
you've got it lined up here.
It's a blessing.
We have some terrific questions that are coming from our audience today, which was we assembled a group of executive directors from a lot of the leading African American film festivals throughout the country. So Lynn Gibson from the Peachtree Village Film Festival in Atlanta talks about the cinematography, which I was going to mention as well. Thanks, Lynn. I mean, my God, was shot so beautifully. The location was amazing. I mean, talk about the shoot.
So we shot on the Evergreen Plantation in Louisiana, which is about an hour north of New Orleans. And then the second act we shot in New Orleans. But the plantation, we had so many inspirational images and mood boards just going in, like before pre-production, going into pre-production. And a lot of those images came from Gone with the Wind, which was interesting because neither Gerard or myself are huge fans of the film for multiple reasons. But what we wanted to do was kind of capture that, idyllic antebellum South that they were trying to put forward, and kind of show it through the same lens, but tell it in a more truthful way. So we actually went to MGM and got the lenses that were used to shoot Gone with the Wind, refit them for our cameras, and shot all of the plantation scenes through the Gone with the Wind lens.
We were determined to correct the record and use the same weaponry that was meant to create really effective propaganda, and we have now corrected that record with their lenses. So we took the weapon away from them and used it to right a wrong. We also, like with Evergreen, I'd like to say that in our determination to shoot on an actual plantation, academically, it made all the sense in the world. But when you actually shoot on a plantation, it is an open air haunted house, and you feel it, and it's palpable. And we wanted that kind of energy, but it was incredibly uncomfortable on myriad levels, not the least of which it felt like, I mean, for me, because I almost feel like I'm an empath in some ways, but I could smell blood. I felt it all around us, and we had to spend extra time because we refused to shoot in the actual cabins of enslaved people and to desecrate and disrespect those houses. So we built replicas of the enslaved people's cabins, just right down on the same path. So we, the cinematography, we worked 6, 7, 8 hours a day with our brilliant DP, Pedro Luke. We had a determination that our frames would look like paintings. It was really important to us that people that took the time to sit down and watch our movie, hopefully overseas, they're watching it in the theaters, but to sit down and watch our movie, that within the first 5 minutes that you say what you will about it, but that that the filmmakers cared, that we really, we understood that the extra mile is the loneliest, but for us, we wanted you to know before Antebellum came on the screen that you were going to have an experience, and that, a part of that communication non-verbally are really powerful visuals in these prismatic colors that imply Gone with the Wind, but a reimagined idea of that.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple of more questions. Linda Eddy, the director of the Denton Film Festival in Texas, she offers a comment about how this film is going to provoke a lot of conversation, and that it's perfect timing. She also compliments you too on the music, cinematography, and the performances. So you guys brought it all together. Again, that sort of leads me back to, I mean, it's masterful, it's beautiful. I mean, what are your expectations in terms of people's reaction? I mean, the cool thing about VOD is that it's a platform that allows more people who would have certainly gone out to the movies to see it. And so potentially you could have an audience, you know, 3 or 4 times larger than would have gone to see it in a house.
Wow, I never thought about that. That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, the potential is there because everyone in America will have access to it from their cable box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I think that we need to move to a different place as far as movies are concerned. I think that the moment calls for something that feels urgent. I think for us, when people finish watching our movie, they should know that we weren't an orchestra playing violins on the deck of the Titanic, that we chose instead to scream from the rafters and do something about it before it's too late. And so I don't mean to in any way disparage other filmmakers that are doing incredible work and entertaining us, you know, all day, all night. For us, however, this is our calling, and I hope that we get a big enough audience and a big enough conversation that we can expand the canon of a very particular type of filmmaking that lends itself to a host of incredibly urgent issues that I think that only cinema, the power of movies, can help articulate for people in a way that is digestible and gives them a sense and a feeling and can activate them into action. I think that we are sleepwalking off a cliff, and I'm deeply concerned about it.
Yeah, we have a lot to be concerned with, I tell you.
Mm-hmm.
More comments from AAFCA member Thomasina Farr. Set design and costume were both gorgeous as well. So, I mean, did you guys work with historians to really capture, I mean, because the attention to detail is there. And I mean,
we worked with the brilliant Sanford Biggers, who is one of the, first of all, he's a dear friend and a brother. And we asked him to do the movie early on, and he said yes, and we're very thankful for that. We worked with Mary Zofries, who is just like
A costume designer, yeah.
phenomenal. And we would sit with her. We shared this book with both she and Jenna Malone, who played Elizabeth, called When They Were Her Property. We went back and we wanted to dive into the history of all of this in such a way that those little Easter eggs, you know, what you'll find upon a second and third viewing, that all of it is grounded in historical fact and also within the culture of white supremacy and language and textures that are unique almost exclusively to them. And we took a lot of our previous work when we worked on the fashion side. It's funny because all of our social justice work, that's kind of, you know, obvious, and we had access to a way of thinking that we applied to the movie. But interestingly enough, it was our luxury sort of fashion work, whether, you know, when I was a contributing creative director to Vogue Brazil, and, you know, some of the things that we had done in really in the opportunity with Alexander Newman and some great photographers with fashion layouts. There's some parts of it that we treated in such a way we weren't going to put Janelle or the enslaved people. It wasn't this drab kind of, it was, they were uncomfortably beautiful sometimes. And we even cast the face of, I think she's the face of Gucci makeup, Achuk. She was the woman in the green dress that's running at the beginning of the movie.
right, she was gorgeous.
Isn't she? I mean, Achuk is
even in Tara, she was still giving you runway.
Yep. And so we like, you know, that was a thing that we did to really knock people off. It's like, well, wait a minute. I mean, this is like the beauty of Black people couldn't be smudged out. You know, it was still so bright in the midst of all this horror and trauma. And that's exactly how it is in America. You can't snuff out our beauty.
Yeah, you can. And the plane scene, that was something like, that was frightening.
Mm-hmm.
Was that deliberate? I mean, how did that scene come about? Was that originally the way?
That was originally in the script. And
Okay.
what happened is when I was a kid, my parents had just moved from Fifth Ward in Houston to an all-white sort of neighborhood. And my babysitter took me to the pool, the neighborhood pool. And you know, everyone there was white, and I remember almost drowning. I had lost my footing and I was almost drowning, and I could see people, but they couldn't see me. It was though I was invisible and I couldn't get my air. And that is what reminded us of the airplane, that like, as these people are suffering down on Earth, there are people going to and fro to their vacations or on business, and they can't see it. And it's right underneath them. And so that's what we were trying to say in those scenes, which I hope that, you know, in the end, you know, the plane is, it means so much to the iconography of the film.
And I guess, you know, based on your comments, it speaks to the fact that, you know, how little has actually changed, even though today, obviously, African Americans have a lot of the material trappings of success. You know, at the end of the day, we're still confronted with the same issues that, you know, your grandfather and my grandfather had to contend with.
Well, that's one of the reasons that we chose someone that, like Veronica Henley, who was, you know, Spelman undergrad and Columbia grad and a successful, celebrated author and thought leader and activist and beautiful wife and mother. And she has built a tremendous life for herself. And I think that sometimes we as Black people mistakenly believe in this future immunity based on station. And then when you get to the station, you realize, nope. So, you know, that was a really important statement for us to make. You know, there's always some way for us to be reminded to get back in our place, to show your papers, to you know, to demonstrate that we are deserving or belong where we are. You know, and it can be the most subtle thing. Where we live in Beverly Hills, like I can walk down a street and someone will, remember when we first got here, and it's like, oh, you know, which house do you live in? And, you know, how long have you been here? And they make it, they're very Southern California, and they make it sound like it's just small talk, but it's really vetting. It's really, I need to understand, do you belong here? And that's just the reality of America, and it's got to change. I think that Black folk we have been extraordinarily, supernaturally patient. And I think that our patience is run out. And I think that I know that I'm not willing to defer the conversation even as another scintilla of a second. And I think that we need to do something about it now. And like I said, if we don't make it to that great future, America ain't gonna make it to that great future. So it's a matter of everybody understanding that our future prospects are tethered.
I mean, has too much happened? Is too much water under the bridge for us to, for society, meaning Black folks and white folks in America, to ever let go of this?
The quick answer,
Because none of us were alive when any of this originated, but yet we still carry the burdens, Black and white,
right,
of those behaviors.
Because here's the thing. I think white people have to acknowledge their
benefit.
Right, period. And I hope that some are starting to understand that. But it's up to us. I think that we started as Black people. I think that there was a faction of us that started believing in, or I don't want to say believing, but not remembering. And the not remembering causes you to point a finger at yourself. And I recognize that we as a people have to take responsibility as individuals and as society, but I also don't think that it is in any way productive for Black people or white to serve as co-conspirators in the erasure of the country's real history. It is only until we can say, okay, well, wait a minute. This happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this is systemic. And this is what we suffered was a collective psychopathy that metastasized all across the antebellum United States. And the people in power decided that, you know what, I'm going to justify this horrific behavior, this murderous, raping, and pillaging. It's a means to an end. It wasn't Rick Santorum, it was Tom Cotton who said, it was a necessary evil. And,
yes.
And we as Black people, I can tell you as a Black man, I have always had real difficulty watching movies that include the bondage of my own people. And I'm embarrassed to say it because I had a conversation with Gabby about it, and Gabby was saying, oh, we need to talk about it all the time. In the same way that our wonderful Jewish community is able to, they take responsibility for their own narratives and their own stories to say, look, the Holocaust happened. And I know if we don't actively have those conversations, we could do it again. And as far-fetched as that may sound to certain people, I'm here to tell you that, well, I feel sorry for them, because the reality is where we're headed toward is something that feels really destructive and something that will leave the country looking unrecognizable. And our piece of it in having this story and telling this story about Antebellum in this particular moment is to say, if you remember the definition of the word antebellum, it is that period before the Civil War, specifically the American Civil War. The question that we have to ask ourselves are, were we talking about the past, or are we talking about an impending Civil War?
And Christopher, I mean, this talk about race, I mean, as a white person, what are your feelings?
I mean, in general, and where we are now, and
where we are now, and what you hope will be gained from the people that watch this film.
I mean, I hope that, in this moment where, as Gerard said, 8 years of Obama, we felt like we had come so far, only to, slide further back with Trump, but I feel like this moment, as horrific as it is to live through, is necessary in order to turn the rock over and really see what it is. I mean, those what happened in Charlottesville when they all popped up and then they're like, oh, it's not quite time yet, and then they come back down, but they're all still there. We need to see them all. We need to go through this unfortunately this horrific moment, and I hope that the film just really kind of drives home that idea that if we don't do that, we're just doomed to relive it over and over again. But I feel like in the end, as we mentioned, we end the film on the dawn of a new day, and I hope there's some hope that comes from the film as well, that we can get there.
Yeah, that was a strong ending. That was a great way to end it. You know, I get it.
I mean, look, thank you. We were looking for, catharsis, but also we're not big on exposition, and it has to be, the idea was Antebellum appears on the screen and we've left you, here's what we want. Here's what we want. We want people, it's like you've gone to the biggest, baddest roller coaster at Six Flags, and you see people in line and they're all in order and, refreshed. And then you see them when the cars pull back up after the ride, and they're all disheveled and looking crazy because they've had an experience. And what we want when Antebellum appears on the screen at the end of the movie, that, but like I just went on a multi-dimensional, it was a ride. And that's what we were trying to achieve.
We're huge fans of, smash cut to black. Now talk about it.
Now talk about it amongst
yourselves. We're not going to say, oh, this is what happened 10 years later. This,
none of that.
It's like end it, have a definitive ending so that folks can talk about it.
Go talk about it amongst yourselves.
It definitely leaves you with much food for thought. So
that's what we want.
The next project, I mean, you two are on fire. I hear that you guys are already gearing up for the next piece.
Nope.
What can you share?
So we wrote Rapture we wrote the short story Rapture right prior to COVID. And we're so excited about it. And then we wrote the script Rapture over COVID, and it's done. And we are about to go into pre-production once we get through all of this, and then we'll go into the next thing. But Rapture is it's crazy.
It's so biblical.
You just wait. And it's this thing. It's a big movie, and it's this thing that is going to. All we can say is it's about the modern global disappearance of millions of people. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, I'm going to keep bothering you, pestering you guys to find out more, but because it sounds great. But no, congratulations, the two of you. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the reaction that you're going to get for this film, and best of luck. And know that our members, the members of the African American Film Critics Association, certainly support you and look forward to continuing to uplift you throughout your career.
I mean, that could actually make me a little teary-eyed, but thank you very much, and we appreciate it, and we appreciate the huge support that you all are lending to us, and we just hope to continue to make you proud in the work that we're churning out. And so thank you for this time and for watching our movie.
Absolutely. Now, for the benefit of people on social, are there any hashtags that you want to share?
I mean, the main hashtag is Antebellum.
Okay.
There's a lot under that now.
Because Lady Antebellum sent us a direct message, the group.
Right.
And we had a dialogue with them because they said, we've heard about this movie and there's all this great reckoning, and we just want you to know that we're working toward a solution. And then I think right after that I went on Don Lemon, and then they changed their name to Lady A, and it was this back and forth. So what we're saying is you're going to find a lot of Trumpers and a lot of extreme right wing with that hashtag also. So it might be helpful.
It's actually interesting, that it all falls under that Antebellum hashtag. Oh, there's Antebellum Film, I think, is the social handle.
Is the right? Wow. Well, now, best of luck to you guys, and I look forward to seeing you both soon.
Yes.
Yeah. Stay safe.